Hello, everyone. Welcome to Orchid in the Wild. I'm Kimberly Inaugural, Senior Events and Outreach Manager here at Orchid, and I'm located in Michigan in the US. Now that you know a little bit about me, I invite you to share a little bit about yourself by participating in the poll that's just been launched. In this, our inaugural session of Orchid in the Wild, I'm pleased to have PREreview and Hughes Medical Institute with me today. In this series, we aim to showcase the vast array of ORCID use cases from around the community and inspire one another to sprout connections and nurture collaborations. If your institution has an ORCID use case, we invite you to submit it for consideration for a future webinar. I'm opening a link here so you can check that submission form out. Now, before we get started, I'd like to bring your attention to some features available during the webinar to enhance your experience. The first is closed captioning and translated captions. These features allow you to enable audio captions and translate those captions into a few different languages. To enable, click on the Show Captions button in your Zoom toolbar. We also have a dedicated Q&A channel, and we invite you to submit your questions throughout the session. To do so, click on the Q&A button in the Zoom toolbar. You can also view questions other attendees have submitted, upvote questions you're interested in, and add comments. We do have some helpful documentation available to assist you in accessing these features, which is available in Resources in the Zoom toolbar. Also available in Resources tab are speaker profiles for today's presenters. Finally, this session is being recorded, and the recording along with session materials will be shared after the session. Now, I am delighted to be joined by members from PREreview, Vanessa Fairhurst, Chad Sansing, and Chris Wilkinson, along with Anna Hatch of Hughes Medical Institute. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Vanessa.
Thanks very much, Kimberly. I'm very happy to be here with you all today, talking a bit about PREreview and how we work with ORCID to enable open preprint reviews for researchers. So to get started, I'll explain a little bit more about the work of PREreview shortly. But we work to open up the peer review process, and we like to question the idea that you'll see involved there in the definition of peer review, that peer review functions as a form of self-regulation by qualified members of a profession within the relevant field. So who decides who's qualified, whose expertise is needed to interrogate, who decides who is an expert? We'd like to challenge that notion. Peer review is also a bit of a black box. It's an opaque process over which few people have control and knowledge of its mechanisms. And the opaqueness of the process is also what makes it so hard to objectively evaluate, and why many lack knowledge around how it works or who can be involved in it. And the image on the right we've also chosen because it depicts sort of how it is also a process that can be quite slow and arduous, a sort of gauntlet that you need to run in order to get your paper published, rather than a constructive and helpful process to improve the science. In addition to the power imbalance that's demonstrated in the picture, it also highlights how reviewers may form part of a homogeneous group. So in the cartoon there, all are white, all mostly appear to be male, senior in their career, and this is the stereotypical representation of an expert, and it's also the identity of about 70% of the editors in the publishing system. So in summary, our work is a direct response to key issues within the traditional peer review process, including the fact that the pool of people called to review, the people willing to do so, is quite small and is often insufficient for the number of review requests, resulting in a few researchers inundated with review requests and on top of their already busy schedules when other people don't have the option to get involved at all. The composition of the review pool is also homogeneous across many different dimensions, and this can also cause issues of bias within the system. Most reviewers are male, mid, late career researchers, subjectively selected by journal editors as experts within their field. And additionally, despite peer review playing such a vital role in what research is published and who buy, most reviewers have never received any formal training in conducting peer review. And on top of that, it often goes unpaid and unrecognized. So at PREreview, our mission is to bring more equity and transparency to scholarly peer review by supporting and empowering communities of researchers, particularly those at the early stages of their careers and those who have been historically excluded, to review preprints in a process that's rewarding to them. So we work to lower barriers for participation, increase the number and diversity of reviewers available to authors, editors, and journals seeking preprint review, provide training and mentorship, for reviewing research manuscripts, including running journal clubs, increase acknowledgement, recognition, and shared power of preprint reviewers, and also to sustain open and equitable practices and values in scholarly communications and research. And our collaboration with ORCID is a vital one to ensure that we're able to make this vision a reality for a more equitable and inclusive peer review system. So one of the reasons we work with ORCID is that we have strong value alignment between our two organizations. Openness is really important to both of us, and we consistently work to ensure that our work is as transparent as possible. Login to the PREreview platform is done via ORCID, and this builds trust with our community. We provide our reviewers with two choices of how to sign their reviews. So they can use their public name as per their ORCID profile, which provides clarity in research contributions, or by using a pseudonymous profile. And we're going to demonstrate what this looks like in a little bit. But this is usually automatically assigned and is a random combination of a color and an animal. And we understand that sometimes a reviewer might not feel comfortable publishing a review under their public name, so we offer this as an option. However, making sure that we do this login via ORCID still ensures we're able to ensure accountability and adherence to our code of conduct. As in the backend, we're able to identify any reviewer and follow up with any causes for concern. And as anyone is able to create an ORCID ID, this also ensures inclusivity and extremely low barriers to participating in the peer review of preprints via PREreview. So we want to extend the reviewer pool, particularly to those who have been traditionally excluded from the process. And finally, and importantly, we want expertise to be measured by constructive contributions and community engagement, as opposed to seniority and prestige. So providing greater recognition to peer review activity is one way of doing this. So being able to offer our community members the option to allow PREreview to automatically write their public peer review activity to their ORCID profiles, we hope will build greater recognition and credit for this work. And we've just got a few numbers so far. So we currently have about 2,736 at last count PREreview users. And these are the numbers that have logged in using their ORCID IDs. And in the last 3 months, we've seen a modest start of about 57 of these connect to their ORCID profiles, which allows us to write their public review activity to their profiles for them. There are currently about 887 PREreviews currently published, with about 100 peer review entries via PREreview on ORCID. So some of these reviews also have multiple authors, which then goes on to ORCID profiles. So we're very much at the start of this journey. We plan to do lots more engagement efforts in this area, and we look forward to seeing what this picture looks like a few months, a couple of years down the line, and see what the impact of this will have been. So Chad and Chris are my colleagues at PREreview, and then I'm going to demonstrate a little bit more what this looks like in practice with a bit of a tour of the PREreview website and how a publication workflow works. So I'm going to pass it over to Chad and Chris.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Chad Sansing. I am the product manager at PREreview. Use he, him pronouns, and I live on traditional lands of the Monacan people in what is Virginia in the United States these days. I'm going to take you through the workflow that we use to publish pre-reviews or reviews of preprints on prereview.org. I'm going to use our sandbox site, which is sandbox.prereview.org, which just means that I can kind of show you around without worrying about publishing a review for real for the purposes of our demo today. And as we go through this demo, as we go through the different pieces of the review workflow, I'll pause from time to time and kind of point out some ways in which we really try to align things with our common values with ORCID, including trust and inclusivity. So on prereview.org or sandbox.prereview.org, if perhaps like me, you are exploring or just trying things out, you will find, this big review of preprint button right there at the top of the page. But we have also recently implemented a feature both through a few pilot preprint servers, our Slack community, and our website to allow folks to request a review of a specific preprint. We've begun displaying some of those requests here on our website as well, and we've started tagging them with their fields and subfields from OpenAlex so that it's easier than ever to kind of matchmake and find the preprints that are most relevant to you as a potential reviewer, or maybe as the lead of a pre-review club who would like to bring a preprint to their club for collaborative review. These things are now, very evident on the site. they're labeled, and whether you're here reviewing all of the requests on the site or in our Slack community, you should be able to use things like these keywords, these subfields, to find things, again, that are very relevant to you for review. So if I go back to the page here, let's see, I'll click on this review request for modular small RNA drives pathogen emergence. And when I click on that request, I get a bit of its meta information, a little bit of its abstract to make sure it is indeed the preprint I would like to review, a little bit of helper text, and then I can click this button, Start Now, to immediately begin my pre-review. I've got a couple different options of how I might go. The first option is with prompts. So we offer something called a structured pre-review that takes you through a series of questions you can respond to by choosing your response from a list of options, kind of multiple choice. And after you make your selection for each question, you'll see a drop-down comment box where you can also add a little bit more constructive feedback for the preprint's author. We also have two other choices with a template, or I've already written the review. Were you to click on either of these, you would get an open text box with a bit of a text editor right here on the platform, where you could either compose your review on the site or copy and paste it from somewhere else. Maybe you've written a collaborative review with others on a shared document, such as a Google document, something like that. You just like to cut and paste it in. You can totally do that. Today, though, we'll start with these prompts just to keep things going quickly along. So I'll hit continue, and then you can see here is what each question looks like. We've got, does the introduction explain the objective of the research presented in the preprint? We'll go ahead and say yes. We'll review this very highly because this is a demo on the sandbox, and so it won't actually publish when we're done. Here is where you can add, additional context in this drop-down box after you've made your selection, and then you can save and continue on to the next question. So we have a question about methods. We'll say that they're highly appropriate. A question about conclusions. We will say that they are highly supported. A question about the data presentations and visualizations being well suited to represent the data. We're going to say, of course they are. How clearly do the authors discuss, explain, and interpret their findings, their potential next steps? We'll say very clearly today. Is the preprint likely to advance academic knowledge? We'll go ahead and say highly likely. Continue through the workflow. And now we have a few other questions meant to help the author think about next steps. So would this preprint benefit from language editing? We'll say no. Maybe there are minor errors. They don't get in the way of, understanding. We'll save and continue. Would we recommend it to others? We'll say, yeah, it's of high quality. Is it ready for attention from an editor, a publisher, a broader audience? Is it ready for that next step? We'll say, yes. And then we get to the point where you can choose which profile you'd like to use to publish with. Now, Vanessa has talked a little bit already about our public profile and our pseudonymous profile. And as she explained, we offer both. Folks who would like to sign their pre-reviews publicly can do so. And then folks who, for whatever reason, maybe a little fear of retribution, maybe they're relatively new to this, a bit nervous, they believe in their feedback, but they just like maybe a little bit of distance for whatever reason between their public identity and this review, they can choose their pseudonym. And you can see mine here because I don't use it to publish actual reviews, but it would be something, as a registered user, you would keep to yourself. But we'll go ahead and I'll sign this one publicly. And there's a little helper text here to remind folks of what the pseudonym is again. And the big idea here is to offer trust. Not only can you kind of trust these publicly signed reviews, but because we do have information on the back end, should we need to investigate a technical issue, a competing interest, a code of conduct violation, we can go ahead and find the authors of each preprint, even if they use their pseudonyms, as Vanessa said, to address any concerns that come up. And what this does, it allows our users to trust the feedback that others are offering. It allows us to investigate if there are any breaches of those trusts, but it also lets the folks who are writing the reviews trust that they're going to be safe and offering honest feedback, still with accountability, by using that pseudonym. So we'll go ahead and save and continue here. We also now have an automated process for adding multiple authors. If you've composed a review or authored it collaboratively, you can say, nope, I reviewed it alone. You can say, I did review it with others, but they don't want to be listed as authors. Or you can say, yeah, and some of them would like to be listed, in which case you affirm that they've read and approved the pre-review as you are submitting it. You hit save and continue, and you get to add folks. I'm going to add Chris, so he can show you this process later on of how to go ahead and connect your name when you're invited to. Let me grab Chris's email here. And then when I hit save and continue, Chris is going to get an email notification inviting him to be listed here as an author of the pre-review. And when Chris goes through this process and then eventually shows you how to connect your participation to your ORCID profile, he'll also show you how, again, even when you're invited as a collaborative author, you still get that chance to list yourself as with your public profile or your pseudonym. We'll save and continue. I don't need to add anybody else, but I could, as many authors as there are participating. We have a question about competing interests. So again, we ask people to affirm that either they do not have competing interests or that they declare them each time. And if we find a discrepancy here, even with a pseudonym, because we have access to the backend, we can use ORCID IDs and authenticated identities to go ahead and investigate any of those competing interests further should we need to. So if someone has a competing interest, a text box appears where they can declare it. Otherwise, they can click no, save and continue. And then also, we ask everyone again to positively affirm, as they do when they register, that they are following the code of conduct. We have a link to the code of conduct. We have these helper text drop downs with information about expected and prohibited behaviors. And again, we want people to be able to trust that the feedback they're getting as authors, as editors, as other stakeholders is constructive, it's helpful, it's honest, candid, useful, and rooted in a good faith review of the preprint. And that's what we ask people to affirm here. We save and continue. We get a chance to review everything we've put down. We could change whether we're going public or pseudonymous with our profile. We could add more authors if we want to invite them. Be like, oh, maybe that's a competing interest. We could change that. We could change any of our answers, just one, final moment to make sure everything is just so. And then we can publish a preview. Now on the sandbox, this doesn't actually go anywhere. It just kind of appears that it goes somewhere. But when you're on prereview.org itself and you publish your pre-review, that record will be created on Zenodo. We'll pull it back into the site for display. If it's part of a club, it'll go onto that club's list on Society, so even more people can find the pre-review. And if you've connected your public account to your ORCID ID, as Chris is about to demonstrate, this pre-review will also eventually be pushed to your ORCID profile as part of your peer review work. And with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you to pick it up from the multiple authors piece.
Great, thanks so much, Chad. Hi everyone, my name is Chris Wilkinson. I'm tech lead manager based in Cambridge in the UK, use he, him pronouns. So yeah, I'm going to carry on with our demo. So I'm just going to share my screen now and to carry on. So my lovely colleague Chad has invited me to be listed as an author on this new review that we published together, that we did collaboratively. So yes, I've got this email received based on Chad putting in my email address that invites me to appear as an author on this pre-review. So I can go ahead and click that link. That takes me through to the preview sandbox and allows me to add myself. So as it stands, I'm listed anonymously so far. I haven't chosen one name I want to appear on, so nothing is public until I go through this process of declaring how I'd like to appear. So every user through ORCID, as Vanessa mentioned earlier on, has to log in with their ORCID ID. So I'm going to start this process. However, I'm not already logged into this site. So it gives me a little bit of information that it's going to send me to ORCID to log in. And if for some reason I've maybe not heard about ORCID before, it gives a little piece of information about that and some of the benefits of it. So if I click start now, it's going to take me through to, you've probably seen the ORCID login screen plenty of times. Where it's going to also ask me to sign in with my ORCID, which I shall just do. Here we go. Okay. Just the two-factor authentication. We'll get through that. Here we go. Okay, so for the first time, I'm signing into pre-review. It's going to ask me to authorize some access. So this is reasonably standard for logging into a service using ORCID, where it just wants a few little permissions. So in this case, just finding out a little bit that I am me. So using ORCID allows us to trust that this person is who they say they are. And we require that anyone appearing on a preview as an author has logged in through ORCID. Even if, as Chad mentioned, they choose to use their pseudonym, we still know behind the scenes this is a real researcher with an ORCID. So I'll authorize access, which will allow me to sign into the pre-review sandbox. And this looks very similar to the screen we saw earlier when Chad was demoing the workflow, where I get the opportunity to choose how I'd like to appear on this. So again, if even though Chad's chosen to go public with his name, maybe I don't want to. Maybe, if I'm early on my career or something, or there's some reason, I can still choose to use my pseudonym here, and it won't be linked to my ORCID ID or ORCID profile publicly. But just for the purposes of this, I'm comfortable with it. So I'm going to choose my public name and the fact that it will link this to my ORCID ID. And as I'm a new user to PREreview in this, we do require every author provides a kind of verified email address, just in case we do need to contact you about any potential code of conduct issues, if we have any questions around the review. This is not made public, but we will use it internally if we do need to contact you. Because I followed a link in an email, I don't have to re-input it. I can choose the one that Chad inputted for me, but I could always choose to use a different one for some reason if I wanted to. Okay, so very smaller check screen here in comparison to what Chad's already on, where I'm just choosing which name I want to add. And for some reason, yeah, if I wanted to change it at the last minute, I could go back and maybe change to use my pseudonym, which will allow me to then publish that, which I'll go back and change it back to be my public one. So this is now ready to go. So if I can click this update preview button now, it will make the change. So my name will be added to this preview. So we'll be able to see it shortly. If I click on the link, here we go. So we're seeing the text of the review that we published, and with Chad and my own public names, and the fact that they're linked to our ORCID profiles. So we use the standard of having the ORCID symbol here. As Chad mentioned earlier on, we now allow people to have their published pre-reviews, if they've chosen to use their public name and connect it to their ORCID ID, appear on people's ORCID profiles as peer review activity. So on our site, if we go into the My Details section, here's some information that we can connect my Preview profile to various services. There's a few different things here, including being able to provide a few other pieces of information which are complementary to what can appear on your ORCID profile. But one of these that we're interested in is being able to connect your ORCID profile to it. So there's a link here that will allow me to do it, where it's very similar to workflow, where it explains that it's going to it will send me to ORCID and will ask for some permissions to be able to write to the ORCID profile, for the reason being that any previews that I publish will get written to my ORCID profile, which I'll be able to show in a second. So if I click the Start Now button, it sends me to ORCID, and I need to get some extra permissions from ORCID to be able to access or to allow PREreview to write to my ORCID profile. So it's asking me for a few more permissions, which ORCID helpfully describe on this screen, provide a bit more detail about it if I'm interested to know what that means. I'm going to authorize access. So great, I've now connected my ORCID profile to my PREreview profile, which means PREreview now has the capability to be able to write to my ORCID profile. If for some reason I wanted to stop doing this, we do provide the option to disconnect the profile, which I can quickly do here. So I can choose to disconnect my PREreview profile from my ORCID one, and we'll stop adding any new PREreviews to the ORCID profile. But you can reconnect it at any time by following the same process. So yes, behind the scenes, because we're on the sandbox here, we haven't published a real review, so I can't demonstrate this particular review being added to my real ORCID profile. But what we'll do is we'll look at Vanessa's ORCID profile, where she has been involved in publication of a few pre-reviews based on some of the training that PREreview involves with. So alongside the kind of normal sections that you've probably seen on people's ORCID profiles before, such as employment details, kind of work published, there is this peer review section, which is what we're now able to write to. So this is what we got the extra permissions for, to be able to write to these to Vanessa's profile. So when she's published a pre-review or has been invited to appear as an author and has chosen to use her public name, we can add an entry for each review. So there are 4 reviews here, which we provide a few bits of information about them, such as each of our reviews gets a DOI. They're all about some preprint, so providing the DOI, the preprint, and a link. So it gives this view link, which if I click on that, we'll go through to one of our public reviews where Vanessa is one of the authors here. And these follow the kind of basic conventions of having you get control over who they appear to. So there are the 3 levels that ORCID provide about whether something is public, whether it's only available to trusted parties, or whether anyone can view it. Vanessa could log in here and control access to these if she really wanted to hide one of these or something. Likewise, ORCID will notify you about when we do write activity to your profile, such as there is a slight delay of potentially up to a few days between one of these peer review entries appearing on an ORCID profile from when it was actually published. ORCID have their own settings around notifications, so they will let you know when something's been written either through email or as a message through the ORCID platform itself, or you can turn them off entirely. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen there now. So yeah, we're delighted to be joined by Anna Hatch today, who is Program Officer at HHMI and has been doing some interesting stuff with PREreview. We're excited to hear more about that. So I'll hand over now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and to share the work that HHMI has been doing on peer review. So I'm going to talk about a program we developed to teach HHMI graduate students and postdocs the art of peer review. This is something that's in its pilot phase. So mainly I'm going to focus on what the pilot is, what we hope to achieve with a pilot, and most importantly, how we're working with PREreview and ORCID to share the peer reviews from this program openly and enable our trainees to get credit through their ORCID profiles and through the recognition that the PREreview platform allows. So before I dive deeper into the details, there were 4 individuals who really helped develop and guide the program. So I want to recognize Michelle Avasar-Whiting, who's also a program officer for Open Science at HHMI, Aracha Prebla, who's the director of Make Data Count, as well as Jessica Polka, who's the Open Science program director at the Aster Institute. Okay, so to give you a brief overview, at a high level, there were 16, or there are, I should say, 16 participants within the pilot. 11 of these are graduate students and 5 are postdocs. They all come from HHMI laboratories. The pilot itself is a 6-month program. So there was a 6-week virtual course that was followed up by 4.5 months of writing peer review reports with their research mentors. And to complete the pilot, each participant must complete 2 peer review reports on preprints with the support, again, of their mentor. So we really see preprints as the secret sauce to the training. And there are several reasons that we chose to focus the peer review training on preprints. And the first, I think, is mainly the most obvious, and it's something that I think Vanessa and Chad have mentioned as well, is that there's no barrier to participate with preprints. Early career researchers are able to participate without relying by an invitation from an editor or their graduate advisor to help write a peer review. We also believe that it helps our trainees really to focus on the science because it allows evaluation without the gatekeeping of a traditional journal. And we see benefits to the preprint authors and to the community itself. So for preprint authors, we're able to provide feedback on their manuscript as they're still working on it. And we think that the transparency from open peer review can help provide context and promote trust in science. So I'll talk a little bit about the objectives for the pilot, and we have separate objectives for the graduate students and postdocs who are participants, as well as their mentors who are providing support. So for the trainees, our number 1 objective is to teach them to be able to appraise scientific manuscripts independently and develop constructive and focused feedback. And of course, right above that is, in doing so, we want them to be able to articulate the purpose of peer review, how it operates, what the different models of peer review are that are available to evaluate manuscripts. And then the last 3 objectives is really where we're working with pre-review. So on identifying conflicts of interests and biases when you're writing peer review reports. And we were lucky enough to have Vanessa as one of our guest speakers in the virtual course component, as well as Daniela. And then the second is to develop a portfolio of public peer reviews. And of course, this is where the pre-review infrastructure is absolutely critical. If we're going to have them write peer review reports on preprints, we need somewhere where we can put the peer reviews. And last is learning how to highlight peer reviews in our participant CV and how to talk about them in job and grant applications. And that's why we're really excited about this new integration between ORCID and pre-review to help better enable that recognition. And I'm going to dive sort of more into those details a little bit later on. So for our mentors, our objectives are a little bit different. We see the training as a way that they're able to demonstrate their commitment to our core values as an organization, that participating is helping to develop the individuals in their lab by honing critical peer review skills. We also think this is an activity that helps to foster an engaged lab environment. And this activity is helping the mentor gain recognition as someone who has a lab where professional development for graduate students and postdocs and other lab members is a priority. And all of these things together can help attract new trainees to their lab. Okay, so a quick overview. I mentioned there are 2 components to the course, or to the training itself. And the first is this virtual course. It's 6 weeks. It started in January, ended mid-February. We met once weekly over Zoom, and it consisted of 4 training modules and 2 practice sessions. As sort of a course coordinator, we helped to facilitate each session, but that we invited expert guest speakers like Vanessa to really help deliver the content. The practice sessions then, again, kind of focused on the practical skills you need to review preprints. And one of those sessions led to a group review of a preprint that is published on pre-review. So that was really exciting that even in these practice sessions, we're trying to focus on what are tangible outputs that can help our trainees further their careers and professional development. So that was the course component. And then we have the second phase or second component that we're in the middle of right now. And in this part, trainees are working with their mentors support to produce 2 peer review reports on preprints that are published openly on pre-review. And the last step of this is that, the last step is program certification for trainees and mentors. We think the certificate is necessary and important to show that you completed the training, but we really believe that the true value of the course is in the outputs that are created, and that they're created not only for the benefit of the trainee, but also for the benefit for the broader community, for the preprint authors, for individuals interested in the field as well. So I want to walk through this process of writing the peer review reports and then highlight sort of how we're working with pre-review and then ORCID in different areas. So for each peer review report that the graduate student or postdoc writes, they're selecting that with their mentor, and then they're drafting the peer review report themselves. Once they've drafted that report, they share it with their mentor to get feedback, and then they incorporate their mentor's feedback. And we see this step as critical because as course facilitators, we can provide input on, this is what the structure of a peer review report should look like. These are how you organize major and minor points. But what we really want is to have that scientific feedback from their mentor as well. So we also see this as a key component, that we're bringing the mentors into the training as well. Once their peer review report is ready, they share it back with us. We do a quick check. We have a rubric of what we believe makes a strong peer review report. This is shared with the participants ahead of time, along with other resources, including sort of a checklist of what to think about when you're writing your peer review. Once we check the peer review report, we will then send the report to the preprint authors to make sure that they see the feedback about their work, and then it gets posted to pre-review. And so what we think is really cool here is that we have a club that hosts all of the peer review reports that are published from our training. And you heard Chad talk about signing with pseudonyms, and this really has been something that has benefited our community quite a bit, where you see our trainees, some of them are opting to publish their peer review reports with their names, but there are others who aren't quite ready to do that, or don't feel that they want to do that for a report, and they're publishing with their pseudonyms. But the report is still publicly available. They're still able to share it. And I think, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I want to add here. I mentioned in the previous slide that as course coordinators, we're sending the peer review reports to the authors. So far, we've gotten a reply back from every preprint author expressing gratitude for the reports, not only for sort of sharing the feedback openly, but also for the content and the insight that's in them. So that's been really exciting to see that it's something that's being received very well by the preprint authors so far. And then I mentioned earlier that we believe the scholarly outputs, the peer review reports themselves really are more valuable here than issuing a certificate. And that's a big reason why we're excited that pre-review can now share a user's activity to their ORCID profile and enable that recognition. So I'm sure sort of Chad and Chris can jump in if I butcher any of the technical language here. But essentially, pre-review has an API integration with ORCID that makes it so all pre-reviewers have the option of allowing pre-review as a trusted organization to automatically list their public preprint review activity to the peer review section of their ORCID profile. And that's what they demonstrated a couple of minutes ago. But I think, I mentioned that reviews can be posted pseudonymously, so pre-review will never connect or export sort of pseudonymous reviews or activity in this way. So there are definitely considerations to think about. So we're really excited about this program. Like I said, we are in the middle of the program, so we're still learning as we're going along. Right now, participants are working with their mentors to produce their two peer review reports. When the pilot wraps up in July, we're going to analyze the outcomes and then incorporate what we've learned to iterate and improve the training itself. We aim to be able to scale up to include more participants from the HHMI community. We also want, once we've sort of improved the course content and the planning materials, making those openly accessible so that it can be adopted and adapted more broadly by other organizations. And with that, thank you so much for your time, and thank you especially to Pre-Review and ORCID for helping us as we're developing this content for our postdoc and graduate student trainees at HHMI.
Thanks so much, Anna. That was really great to hear. We've really enjoyed working with HHMI so far, and it's really good to hear the value that we're bringing and the impact it's having for your students. I've got a couple of slides just to finish our discussion, our presentation today, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So I just wanted to end with some sort of slides about what we might go on to do next. So I'd like to mention this is not a limitation of our partnership with ORCID. There's lots of things we might go on to do together for the benefit of our community. And for example, this could look like sharing more information about peer review training to ORCID profiles. So we've talked briefly about the fact that we offer training to peer reviewers, but we do have our open reviewers training workshops. And this is something that we might also look into future to provide more recognition for participants of this training. We could also provide more information related to PREreview Club publications and also improved information about the peer reviews that we have on there already. So for example, more information than just the DOI, but also things like the title we could start to include. So these are all things that we're keeping in mind for the future. We also constantly assess emerging needs from our community as they arise. We run design sprints with community members, and we have a variety of different feedback channels in which people can give us feedback on what we're doing, ask questions, and provide suggestions for where we might go next. And if you are looking at what you can do next with PREreview and ORCID, we welcome you to come along, create an account on prereview.org, just use your ORCID ID, and it should be very straightforward. Fill in your profile with some additional information if you so wish. You can visit your My Details page, as Chris showed in the demonstration, and click on the Connect Your ORCID profile to allow us to start sharing your public review activity to your ORCID profile. And then start reviewing. Choose however you would like to go about doing your review. You can copy and paste in your review. You can fill out a basic template, or you can go through the structured review prompts that Chad showed earlier. You can also then look into open review training for your organization or join our next community workshop. We share news about that in our newsletter and on social media and also in our Slack channel. You can also start a PREreview club like the one that Anna mentioned from HHMI, or join an existing one. There's some that are open and some that are closed. So you can look at the ones that are open and see if there's anywhere you would like to participate in. And you can also join our wider conversations on our PREreview community Slack, where anyone is welcome to join. And with that, I'm just going to pop this slide at the end so that if anyone would like to hear anything more from us or join our Slack, then you can do so via these QR codes, or you can always contact us at community@prereview.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you both to the pre-review team and Anna for this wonderful presentation. Lots of good insight here, lots of opportunities to learn more. We do have plenty of time for questions, so I encourage everyone to submit any questions or comments that they may have to the Q&A. Chad, I know you answered this one, but perhaps there's others on the call who might like to hear the answer, so I'm just going to ask again. When the review is done and published on Zenodo, are the preprint authors made aware that a pre-review exists?
Yeah, typically right now that's left up to the reviewer or the organization, or as Anna described, the organizers of a club or a group or a course who want to let the authors know this has been done. We have started using the Core Notify protocol with a few preprint servers to gather author requests specifically directly from those servers. And one of the ways we envision furthering that work in the near future is figuring out how then to send back a confirmation of reviews on requested preprints whenever they occur to those requesting authors via their preprint servers. So that work on those particular servers is kind of coming up, and any other servers who would like to join that work and just get in touch with us, we'd love to expand that network further. And then on the site itself, this is something we're kind of like interested in, and we'll no doubt be researching further in the future. But as Anna described, typically the reviewers or whoever is organizing a group of reviewers will let the author know if that's something that is a practice in their group or part of their professional practice when they review.
Awesome, thank you. And your answer actually feeds nicely into my next question, which is, has there been any interest from preprint servers and or funders to collaborate directly with PREreview on opening up review processes?
I don't know, Vanessa, do you want to address that one, or I can start with a yes and then throw it to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the driving motivators of most of our relationships, whether it's with organizations interested in doing clubs, trainings, funders. It's this entire idea, right, of opening peer preprint review further. And what we do is, we listen to those organizations, we listen to individuals when we are developing kind of new features or rebuilding features that were maybe not working correctly in previous versions of the site. We'll run community design sprints and, really kind of keenly analyze what community members give back to us during those calls in terms of the problems and challenges facing them. And so we're constantly kind of designing and trying to work on and testing solutions that come directly from the challenges and issues that groups like HHMI and other club organizers, as well as, frequent reviewers inform us about, either through design sprints, one-on-one meetings, or, user research interviews.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have had lots of conversations, really positive conversations about doing more preprint review. As you know, like over the last, 5 years, preprints have really expanded over time. So it only naturally goes with that there's more of a demand for preprint review and exploring different ways in which we can do that, how to make that as equitable as possible, as open as possible, as fair as possible. So we're always having conversations and always thinking about how best we can do that and improve our best practices over time. But yes, it's been a very positive journey. And yeah, we've got lots of organizations that we already work with, and we're looking forward to working with others in future as well.
Great. Well, speaking of feedback, there's a little bit of feedback in the Q&A, just noting that it would be a nice feature to have something on the preprint itself mentioning that a review exists. And while we're talking about feedback, what has the feedback been from researchers or users since PREreview integrated with ORCID?
I'm gonna let either Chad or Chris, I think, answer that one. Maybe Chad, you've had most conversations with people about the feedback on this.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting, and I think the folks who probably are most excited and gratified about it are our clubs that organize frequent activities like HHMI, and other, whether courses or labs, but also the individuals who attended our design sprints and let us know that, recognition was important to them, and that they would love to be able to kind of pull what they're doing from PREreview into the other places where they are representing their professional identities online, with ORCID being kind of foremost amongst them. So, from kind of looking at the feedback that we've gotten, we know that there are many users who are happy about our release of this feature. It's exciting to see it kind of grow over the past few months. It's something we'll continue to share and emphasize. It's part of our onboarding process now, and it's great to see that the folks who are kind of connecting to ORCID are, coming back to do more and more pre-reviews. There's like 57 accounts connected already, but 100 records of peer review. So the folks that are using it are coming back, frequently to contribute more reviews and to contribute more to the authors and to the science. And it's just great to be able to help them get recognition for that on ORCID as well. Chris,
Awesome.
Anything to add there?
Nothing to add about that, but just about the slightly earlier question about mentioning reviews on preprints themselves, which is something that's again, in case we are collaborating with preprint servers. So, for example, BioArchive and Cielo, you can see any previews that appear next to the preprint text itself, and previews also appear in places like SciT, which is an aggregator of various preprint review services. So we're very interested in kind of collaborating with preprint servers and getting this information out there that for both readers of preprints that these things have been through peer review, and also connecting it to the authors themselves as useful feedback.
Thanks for that, Chris. My next question is for Anna. Firstly, I want to thank you for sharing about your program today. It was wonderful to hear about. It sounds like such a great way to help early career researchers to not only get into peer reviewing, but also to help populate their ORCID records. And I noticed when I took the poll at the start of this call, about 35% of our attendees today are researchers. And I know Vanessa shared a very helpful slide at the end there about what to do next, but I'm wondering, Anna, from your perspective, do you have any advice for these researchers if they want to get started with pre-review, get started peer reviewing, but don't necessarily have a group or a mentor program that they can do?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be so HHMI has we're developing the course for our graduate students and postdocs, but there are a lot of other programs that focus on training on peer review as well. And obviously, like, the most well-known one is PREreview. So I think my answer to your question is, for researchers who are interested in trying to becoming familiar with open peer review, providing feedback on preprints, like, join the PREreview Slack community, create an account and try it out and see how it feels. And there's a lot, what I like so much about PREreview is that it has a great community feel to it, right? Like, it is a community of folks who are interested and wanting to rethink how we can provide feedback on articles. How can we help each other improve their work? So I think PREreview is a great community if you're on your own to get involved with.
I'd also just like to add to that something we always like to emphasize is, although we say there's no barriers to entry, which is true to peer review, lots of people still feel like, oh, I'm not qualified for this, or I'm not experienced enough. And we would just say, try it out, like, come along, try it out. You don't need to be whatever your version of an expert is. Please do come along, see if you read any interesting preprints, give a review, give some feedback. Please let the author know that you've done so if you're able to, and just see how it is. And please do join our conversations on Slack. We have lots of conversations about this type of thing, about different training events that come up, not just with the peer review, but with the wider community as well. So if you're looking to get involved in peer review, then please join us, and we'll be happy to help.
And just to further echo that, sorry, Chad.
No, go
I
for
was
it.
just going to mention about these kind of structured reviews that Chad mentioned there, showed us earlier about. These are a nice set of questions that you can go through that hopefully would be able to help you get started with reviewing a preprint by guiding you through things you might want to look at. And you can choose to provide as much detail as you like, by some context to your answers, or maybe not if you don't want to. And then potentially, you can choose to publish it under your pseudonym rather than necessarily link it to your public identity. So we hopefully do provide a really low barrier to entry on this, as well as potentially joining the training and community that's PREreview offer as well.
Yeah. And I was just curious, Vanessa, in addition to the training, do you want to talk a bit about live pre-reviews as well? Because that's an opportunity where if you maybe don't want to start a review by yourself, but you also perhaps don't have the time to commit to a fuller training, you can still kind of show up in community and learn an awful lot about how things work.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. And this is actually something I should have mentioned earlier when we had the discussion, the question about funders and organizations looking to get involved with preprint peer review as well, is that we do often collaborate with other journals to run these live reviews. So we've been running them in collaboration recently with JMIR Publications, for example. And this is an opportunity for you to come along. We select a preprint. We send this out to people a couple of weeks in advance. You can sign up and then you join it, read it, and then come along on the day. You can select whether to come just as a listener and just see how it works. You can come as a discussion participant, but you can also help us to compile a final review after the call. And in the call, we go through a series of questions. We discuss a preprint all together. And we make notes in a Google Doc, or we talk out loud. We capture all the notes as we go through. At the end, we compile all of these notes into a final review. People have the option to be listed as a review author and also get credit on ORCID. And that's a good place to get started. So if you're interested in that as well, we do share news of upcoming live reviews, again, on social media, in our Slack, also on our newsletter. So there's lots of ways to get involved, but that is also a nice way if you're feeling a bit apprehensive, that you can join a group review and see how it works.
It sounds like a fun opportunity, so I hope some people on the call would take advantage of that. I think we've kind of touched broadly on my next question, but I'll ask more specifically. How do you see the ORCID pre-review collaboration strengthening research integrity and confidence in the scholarly dialogue?
Sure, who wants to go? I'll go. I think it's incredibly valuable, and it really does strengthen the dialogue. For one thing, the fact that ORCID is open to everyone really enables us to be able to be as inclusive as possible in terms of who can participate on peer review. As we've already said, that the ability to be able to build a profile as a reviewer and have your public peer review activity linked there, it also gives it more I guess like legitimacy. Like this is often work that went hidden behind closed doors before, that some peer reviews be doing tons of work and never receiving any credit for it. So it builds that legitimacy of the work, it builds credit for the work, recognition for it. And I think this strengthens the whole review process, not only like ensuring that it is recognized and it's seen as important, but it's also something that lots of people can get involved with and start building a profile as a reviewer. I don't know if any of my colleagues or Anna wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, writing peer reviews is part of the scholarly work that researchers do. But because it's not something that you actively get credit for always, that it's hard to consider it as a piece of scholarly work. And so by having peer review happen openly in a way that enables recognition, that's able to sort of legitimize it as, this is a scholarly output that contributes to our advancement of knowledge. And of course, peer reviews do that, right? The main goal of peer review is to help improve the paper. So I see this as like a key way to improving research integrity.
Any other final thoughts from anyone? All right. Oh, Chris?
I was just going to say they were great answers.
They were great answers.
I
I
think
think they covered everything. Awesome. Well, that's coming up on the end of our time here today. So I do want to thank Vanessa, Chad, and Chris from PREreview for joining us today, along with Anna from Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Really appreciate you guys giving us your time today and sharing more about PREreview and the things that are going on at Howard Hughes Medical Institute. I want to thank all of our attendees today for joining us, and we hope to see you at a future event. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Be well.
Bye.